Everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad to be here with all of you tonight. Should be a great conversation tonight. I'm happy to talk to you all. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. We're going to have yet another one of our great late night conversations. So,
The American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad to be here with all of you tonight. Should be yet another amazing conversation. We have many of these, and they go in all kinds of different directions. So yeah, for those of you who may not be familiar with the way we do things, first I give my opening remarks, which is what I'm doing right now. I just talk about what it is I want to talk about. Then after that, we do the roll call, where we find out who it is that's on the other side of the camera. And when we find out who's on the other side of the camera, I call you all out, names and locations, and we find out, and there's always people watching from other countries. There's people watching from different parts of the United States, and it's always really neat to find out who it is who's watching. And then after that, I just answer people's super chat questions for the rest of the night. That's how it ends, is just me answering people's questions. And the night is young. It's just a little after 10. So if there's something you want me to talk about in the second half of the program, what I need you to do is send me, if you're on the Rumble, send me a Rumble rant. If you're on the Rockfin, I need you to send me a Rockfin tip. And if you're here on YouTube, you need to send me a YouTube super chat. And then in the second half of the show, I can talk about whatever you want me to talk about. If something is important to you, ask me about it or give me a comment on it. Give me something to react to. That is what you can do. And it's very much appreciated that we can do that. And we're always here to answer your questions. So ask me whatever you want to ask me. Get me talking about whatever you want me to talk about in the second half of our show. Now, before we jump into everything, I do have a couple announcements to make. Just a couple quick things. First thing first. Hold on, got to queue up the picture. First things first, I want to remind you that every morning on the Center for Political Innovation YouTube channel, we have a morning message. Every single morning, we have a morning message on the CPI YouTube channel from a different member or friend of the CPI. A different member or friend will make a message. We had a message from Jeff Young, and now Jeff Young just became a member of the CPI. He just joined, Jeff Young of Kentucky. We're honored to have him. Nick Brana of the People's Party, Lori Spencer of Maverick News. They've all made messages, and we appreciate it. Our own members have made messages, and many messages from John McCarthy, messages from Briggy, messages from Elizabeth Young, our president, messages from Tyler, messages from Noah. We have had messages from so many different members. I'm about to upload message number 44, and that'll be uploaded tonight. And we're going to try to see if we can go to 100 days of having morning messages from CPI members. And beyond that, there's no reason we should stop at 100. But the idea is to enable people to start their day with revolutionary hope and optimism. Start your day in the right spot. There's so much toxicity in this world, and we are struggling for truth and justice here in the center of American imperialism. So because of that, we want you to start your day with revolutionary hope and optimism. And on top of that, we want you to make a message, right? Because that's one way you can contribute. Many people are doing it and stepping up and making great messages. So if you want to make a message, send it my way. My email is calebmaupin, all one word, at gmail.com. Send it to me. We transfer. Send me a file and I will take a look at it. And if it is if it's up to our standards, which is, pretty decent. If it's something that I think will help our community, why, we'll put it up there. And thanks to everyone who's already made messages. So many great messages today. There was a great message from John McCarthy. The day before that, there was a lovely, lovely message from Sam Bismuth Hertz. And the day before that, we had a message from Peter Coffin. And we are just rolling out messages. Gabby was before that. Gabby Hernandez in Chicago made a beautiful message about what it's like to be a single mother and the struggles and the hardships of being a single mom in Chicago, what that was like. Beautiful message. So every day we open with a new morning message from a member of the Center for Political Innovation or a friend or guest, right? Very much want to let people know they have that option. Make a morning message and be sure to tune in every day and watch the morning messages. Couple other announcements. Here's one. Yesterday, I was on a Twitter space with Lori Spencer. She hosted it with people from the RFK campaign, with people from alternative media from around the world. Many different high-level guests. It was a really, really tremendous space. And I was really honored to participate. Lori's in the chat. She just dropped the link in the chat. Thank you, Lori. Thank you very much for inviting me to that great space. Go and check it out. It was a really, really tremendous conversation that I was able to contribute to, and I really appreciate that. Lori does great work on her channel. Lori Spencer and the folks at Maverick News are good friends of the Center for Political Innovation. I'm really glad they organized this important space. Libertarians were there. Socialists were there. LaRouche supporters were there. All kinds of people were there. People that believe in social justice, people who believe in freedom of the press, people who are opposed to tech censorship. That was the theme, was opposing tech censorship. And it was a really, really tremendous broadcast. So I'm really glad to have been part of it. And I would encourage you to go listen to it, because at this point, the censorship that's been directed at the RFK campaign on YouTube constitutes election meddling. We, at this point, have the Silicon Valley elite trying to tell us what candidates should be allowed to get their message out and what shouldn't. Just like they suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story before the last election. This is particularly ridiculous. So I'm really glad that we were able to participate. It was really, really great. I was honored to be there, Lori, and thank you. Thank you for highlighting that. Oh, looks like we've got our first super chat. Okay. All right, writing it down. Thank you very much. And we will get to that in the second half of our program. Thank you very much. The next announcement I did want to make is after much anticipation by many people, this book is now available. My new book, Letter to Bob Avakian, is now available. Now, this book is a critique of Bob Avakian's views and assessment of the role he's played. It's not a hit piece by any means, but it does reveal some new information, and it is now available. So I would encourage you to check it out. It has surprised everyone who's read it. It is not what people are expecting. I've gotten some great feedback on it already. Our intention, our hope is that because the Revolutionary Communist Party is out there and very visible, and they promote Bob Avakian and his writings on college campuses around the country, we want people that start looking into Bob Avakian because they might be looking for a communist group to join. We want them to find out our side of the story, to hear what the Center for Political Innovation has to say. So this book is now available. This is our latest Center for Political Innovation book. It's under 300 pages. It's only about 270 some pages. And you can order your copy today. It just became available finally. Beautiful cover designed by Elizabeth Young. Shout out to Kyle, who did the layout work for me, which was a little bit of a challenge. The guy who I have done my layout with previously doesn't want to work with me anymore. So now I had to find somebody new last minute, and Kyle stepped up to the plate. He did an amazing job. Shout out to you, Kyle, if you're watching. It was a roller coaster. I was quite nervous at first, but he figured things out and he did an amazing job. It's beautifully, beautifully laid out. Graphics, 19 different graphics, actually 21 different graphics, throughout the book. It was beautifully laid out, beautiful cover by Elizabeth Young. And this time, the cover is not only on the front of the book, it's a full cover. Elizabeth has much more patience than I do with tedious instructions about how to upload the cover right and all of that. Elizabeth did an amazing job. Our president, Elizabeth Young, who has a background in visual art, she did an amazing job, right? She based on a photograph of Bob Avakian, she was able to, design this beautiful cover and the back. And we've got, it was just really amazing. So I'm really happy that this book is available, and I hope that a lot of people read it and will take it seriously. And honestly, I hope Bob reads it. Bob's 82 years old. He's probably got a lot of other things to deal with, but I'm hoping that Bob will read it and that I hope he responds. I hope he offers a rebuttal. I think it would be strategic for him to do so. I strongly doubt that the Revolutionary Communist Party or Bob Avakian will offer a rebuttal to what I've written. They tend to be a little bit paranoid. They'll probably think this is some kind of sinister government operation against them or something, which it is not. And it's not written in a completely hostile way. I'm critical, but I'm not hostile. But I don't really expect them to respond to this book, but it would rock my socks off if they did. And it would be in their interest, I think, if they did as well. All right. And I see we got 2 Rumble rants that came in. If Donald Trump got in again and became some kind of FDR 2.0, would that be enough to save capitalism? And Arpalm Dutt criticized FDR's New Deal and outlined the fascist tendencies from it in his new book, Insights and Great Recommendations. Wow. 2 great super chats, one from Delta V, they're Rumble rants on Rumble, one from Delta V and one from Unknown. And I will definitely address those in the second half of our program. No question about it. And the way I've been doing it is I've been doing Rumble rants first, then I've been doing Rockfin tips, and then after that, I've been doing the YouTube super chats. So the Rumble rants will be first. If you want to get to the front of the line, go to the Rumble rants. But I tend to answer. If you send me a question, I will send you an answer. If you send a question as a Rumble rant or a Rockfin tip or a super chat, I will give you an answer. So, yeah, like I said, I hope that Bob replies to this. I hope he takes the time to write a response. I don't think he will, and I don't expect it. But I have been wrong before. And I think, again, if I was Bob, I would respond to this. I would respond to this because, there you go. There you go. So I hope folks will check that book out. It is now available. If you like it, maybe drop me a review on Amazon, something like that. I have a number of interviews about the book lined up, and I want to do as many interviews about this book as possible, even for small YouTube channels, right? I just want this to be out there because I know for a lot of people, the first communist group that they encounter in real life, IRL, is the Revolutionary Communist Party. And I want to have my 2 cents, my side of the story, enter into that conversation. I want people that are looking into Bob Avakian and his works to hear my critique of Bob Avakian and critique of his work, as well as assessment, praise, etc. That's what I'm trying to do. We are hacking Bob Avakian's algorithm, and I hope that our operation is successful. So you can order your copy today, and I would encourage you to if you have a small YouTube channel and you want to interview me about this book, let's do it. You've got a big YouTube channel and you want to interview me about this book, let's do it. I am all about, we are trying to get our side of the story out there, trying to get our optimistic, constructive socialist message out there. And that is what we're doing. So I wanted to let you all know about that. And those are my announcements. So now I'm going to start my opening remarks. I'll be writing down people's questions, their Rumble rants, their Rockfin tips, and their super chats as they come in. And I know you all are going to send me a lot of great questions for the second half of our show because you all want to have a good show, and you all also want to use the opportunity to make the show go in the direction that you want. You want to craft the show in your own image. You want to do it your way. You want this show to appease you. So I encourage you to use your power as someone who is watching this live as it's happening. I encourage you to use your power and send a question for the second half. And on that note, I am going to start talking. I'm going to start my opening remarks for tonight. First thing I've got to say before I say anything, Gray Zone has been very horribly suppressed. One of the sites that they use to fundraise their operation banned them. And that is unbelievable. Just the latest example of tech censorship. So we stand with Gray Zone. Gray Zone does great anti-imperialist journalism, exposing the lies of the wars and the empire and such. And so we stand with Gray Zone. We are on their side. Retweet if you have a chance. Retweet about them getting banned. Unbelievable that they've been suppressed. They do great anti-imperialist journalism, and we support them. So on that note, I wanted to start out by telling a story. And this story, I feel like a lot of you who are watching this can relate to this. But the story in and of itself isn't the point. The point is how I understand it now versus how I've thought of this in the past. So here we go. I remember when I was a freshman in high school, I was not doing very well academically, wasn't getting very good grades because I was always losing papers and because I was, not turning things in on time. And, I just wasn't doing very, very well. And I had a test coming up, and math has never been my best subject. Math has never been my best subject. And I knew I had to get a good grade on this math test, or else there was going to be a problem. There was going to be a problem if I didn't do well on this upcoming math test. My mother was quite upset with me, and there was a lot of drama in my household related to grades. And I just knew I had to do very well on this math test. So I'd been studying for the math test. I'd been going over, doing different, math problems, etc. So then I went to go and take a shower. And I got into the shower, and I was worried about the math test that I had the next day. I was worried about it. And it was one of those like shower bathtubs, you know what I'm talking about. It's both a bathtub and a shower. So I'm in the shower. I'm scrubbing my body with soap and putting shampoo in my hair. And I'm thinking about this math test. And I'm thinking about the mistakes I tend to make when I do the math problems and how I can not make the mistakes. And then I hear a sound. And the sound that I hear is the gargling of the drain. I remember the drain on my shower, for whatever reason, as water was going down it would go gargle. It would just make this noise. I mean, it sounded like someone burping or something. You ever have a drain like that? And it was a very annoying noise, but my drain always made that noise. When water was going down the drain, it would gargle. For whatever reason. I don't know if there was a lot of dirt in there. Maybe we needed to have a plumber come clean it out. I don't know what it was, but sometimes drains on bathtubs gargle. So it was going gargle, and I'm hearing that annoying sound of the drain gargling. And I'm hearing that annoying sound of the drain gargling. But I realized I put my foot on top of the drain. I just put my foot on top of the shower drain, just right over the hole that the water goes down. And it stopped. The gargling sound in the shower stopped. It just stopped. because the water was going through it. It had to go through my foot, and so it wasn't going through as fast, and so it wasn't making that annoying gargling sound. And I thought, well, that sounds so much more peaceful, so much more peaceful. I would love to take my shower in peace and not have to deal with that gargling sound. But this hurts, right? I've got my foot pressed up against the drain. It's on top of the metal drain, and it kind of hurts to keep my foot on top of the drain like this. But it's making my shower much more peaceful. It's giving me silence. It's giving me silence. But it's hard to keep my foot on top of the drain. But by keeping my foot on top of the drain, I'm allowing there to be silence in the shower. All I can hear is the shh of the water coming down. I've got my foot on top of the drain, and my shower is much more quiet and much more peaceful. And so then in that moment, I did something very strange. Very, very, very strange. I said to myself, if I keep my foot on top of the drain, and I don't move it, even if it's painful, even if it's awkward, but I just keep my foot on top of the drain, and I don't let this drain gargle the whole time I'm taking a shower, I'll get the grade I need to get on my math test. And so I did it. I proceeded to soap my hair, rinse my hair, soap my body, rinse my body, all while keeping my one foot on top of the drain. And it was not pleasant. It was not comfortable, but I just kept my foot pressed down on top of the drain so there was no gargling for the rest of the shower. And the water is dripping through there. It's just peaceful and quiet, and I'm keeping my foot on top of the drain so there's no gargling. And I'm thinking, if I can just keep my foot on top of the drain, which is uncomfortable and awkward, but if I can keep my foot on top of the drain, I will get an A or whatever grade I needed to get on my test. And I've thought back on that moment. I actually don't remember. I think I got the grade I needed to get. I think I did, but I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly. That's not the point. That is not the point. There's many times I've looked back on that story and I've laughed at myself, right? I've said, this is just completely silly, right? This is what they call magical thinking, right? There is absolutely no connection between the drain in my shower and the gargling sound and my mathematics score. They have nothing to do with each other. And I've looked back on that, and I've thought back about that many times, and I've found out that many people do things like this. This is a very common thing that people will do throughout their life, is they'll make up little things like that. If they're worried about something, if they're having anxiety about something, they will give themselves little tasks to do, little things that they can do that have absolutely nothing to do with the outcome they want, and believe that by accomplishing those little things, they can somehow make a difference. And the way I learned over the years to think of that was to call it magical thinking, to call it idealism, and to say, it's a tragedy, right? This is a tragedy. I was so anxious about my math test, I invented some magic spiritual thing to do to try and improve my grades. And that, this is what Marxists generally say about this kind of thing, right? Religion is the heart of a heartless world and the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. The people are suffering so bad and there's nothing they can do about it, but to console themselves, they make up a story, they invent a ritual that they can do, they invent a god they can pray to make everything okay. And that's generally the way I thought of that. I would look back on that and say, wow, that's an example of me being a silly idealist, about me practicing magical thinking. It's embarrassing. And I just thought of it that way. But as I got older and I talked to people, I realized that I wasn't the only person who did things like this. We all do things like this, right? We all do things like this. But recently, I've come to see it in yet a new light. Yet a new light. This is a big revelation to me. As I told you, the standard Marxist interpretation of the story I just told you is that this was me trying to have power over a situation where I had no power. And this was my mind in its nervousness and anxiety adopting magical thinking. But I look back on that now in light of some of the reading I've been doing, on some of the conversations I've been having lately. And I've realized something. What I did in my shower decades ago, holding my foot over the drain, believing that by stopping the gargling sound, I could somehow affect my mathematics score, and what people do every day when they do this little strange thing that we are compelled to do, is not stupid at all. It's not stupid at all. It's actually brilliant. Because yes, the drain in my shower, the gargling sound that it made, my foot being on top of it, was not directly connected to my mathematics score. But my brain was. And by forcing myself to put my foot over the drain, to exert willpower, to put myself in an uncomfortable position, to force myself to do something I did not like, exerting self-discipline and willpower, a little feat, a little task. And while I carried it out, thinking and envisioning that this would give me the strength to do well on my mathematics test, that's actually brilliant. Because that's the way the human mind works. If you want to achieve something, you've got to be thinking constantly about how you can achieve it. If you want to achieve something, you've got to be thinking constantly about how to achieve it. And part of thinking constantly about achieving it is exerting willpower and focusing. And so by forcing myself to put my foot on top of the drain and not move it, and not allow the gargling sound to go on for the entire shower, and endure that discomfort because I believed in some weird decision I had made in my mind that would affect my mathematics score, that is actually a very brilliant thing I was doing. And there's a reason that it is instinctual in human beings to do this. Human beings have done this for thousands of years. Some ways that obviously we're not really into, like animal sacrifices and things like that. But for thousands of years, people have done this. They have subjected themselves to discomfort. They have committed themselves to what seems like a meaningless ritual for the purpose of focusing their mind psychologically so they can achieve their goals. For thousands of years, human beings have done this. It is in our genes. It is in our instinct to do this kind of thing. Because this is how we learn to master our own minds. Let me repeat this. This is how we learn to master our own minds. Before you can master the world around you, you have to master the world within you. Before you can achieve success in the world, you must achieve success in your own mind. And that human existence is not simply a battle with the environment, but it is a battle with ourselves. We're constantly struggling to focus, constantly struggling to do the best that we can to achieve our goals. And that this little ritual that I invented, which I'm sure you have done something like this in your life, and don't admit, don't deny it, right? You don't have to admit it. Maybe you've done something very stupid. But little rituals like this can have a big impact. They can have a very, very big impact because they are about exercising willpower. They're about learning to focus. They are about exerting your will. They are about envisioning what you want and mobilizing your willpower, your psyche, around the idea that you will achieve it and that you will endure in order to achieve it. This is actually something human beings struggle with every day. And this is where I would argue the Marxist movement in the United States has been weak. And that this is where CPI, the Center for Political Innovation, has something very amazing to offer the American socialist and anti-imperialist movement. We have something utterly amazing to offer because we have mastered this understanding. And now, in order to make this point, because there are probably people who are watching now and they're like, what the fuck is Caleb talking about? His drains gargling and he's got a math test and that means that it was brilliant. There's probably people that have no idea what I'm talking about. So now I'm going to take this conversation in a completely different direction. What is it that Monty Python says? And now for something completely different. This is a news report that I came across today about the Asian Games, which are gearing up to happen in China.
It's a big day for Hangzhou Asian Games volunteers. Thursday's commencement ceremony was held at Zhejiang University. Thousands of volunteers took an oath to serve the Games. During the ceremony, the acting president of the Olympic Council of Asia, Raja Render Singh, sent a video expressing gratitude to all the volunteers. And the spotlight of the ceremony is, of course, on these volunteers behind me. And as you can see, today they are dressed in a very eye-catching blue and green uniform. There will be altogether 37,000 volunteers. They were chosen from over 300,000 applicants from across China. That means only 12% applicants become volunteers. Students say they cherish the opportunity to share the Olympic spirit and serve guests from around the world.
非常的激动，希望能够发挥我们的窗口作用，去向世界能够展示我们中国青年的一个形象。
I'm from Egypt.
I'm an international student at Zhejiang University of Technology. Being able to serve in the Asian Games as a volunteer is actually an honorable thing for me. As far as I'm at service, okay, and helping everyone in need, then I'm satisfied.
Future Friends Unite! These volunteers will begin taking up their roles in the upcoming days. They say they are ready to welcome guests from around the globe. Chen Yingling, CGTN, Hangzhou, Zhejiang Province.
So, I just saw that report. Now, what do we take from that report, right? Now, we take from it that the Asian Games are happening in China. Okay, the Asian Games are happening in China. We also take from that a number of people applied to be volunteers at the Asian Games, and that is a very high honor in China to be a volunteer at the Asian Games. And we take from that today they just had a ceremony to start the opening for those who've been selected to be volunteers at the Asian Games. Okay. But this is what I want you to take from this. Okay. I'm turning the sound off here. This is what I want you to take from this. What is that? What are they doing there? They're having a flag ceremony. Did you see that? They're having a flag ceremony. And now what are they doing, right? So first over here, they're having a flag ceremony. They got all these different flags and they're marching around with different flags. And now what are they doing? They're all standing there in their uniforms. And what are they doing? What is that crowd of kids doing? What are that crowd of young people doing? What are they standing there and doing? They are taking an oath, a pledge. They're taking a pledge. And then they have quite an elaborate ceremony, it looks like there. But yes, they started out with a flag ceremony, right? They got flags. They're waving the flags. They're marching with the flags. It's quite an elaborate flag ceremony, I must add. And now they're taking an oath. They're taking an oath, and they're all wearing uniforms. They're all wearing uniforms, even though the games haven't started yet. The games haven't started yet, and no one's there, but they're standing all there in their uniforms, and they're waving their flags around, and they're taking an oath, and wow. Wow. Does that remind you of a certain organization in the United States? Is there any organizations in the United States that come to mind when you see people taking an oath and having a flag ceremony? Is there anything that just pops into your mind at that moment? Are there any images that come into your mind when you hear about people taking an oath? Just think for a moment. Is there anything when you hear about a group of people that are having a conference or an event or a gaming event or something like that, and they all get together and they open with a flag ceremony and they all take an oath? What is that? What is that? What organization does things like that? What organization does things like that? Well, in case you haven't thought of it already, in case it hasn't yet occurred to you, I will help jog your memory.
Thank you. And we start out our events at CPI with our Pledge of Unity, which you can find in your conference folders. The Pledge of Unity was adapted from the Pledge of the World Federation of Democratic Youth, an organization formed after World War II for international solidarity. So if you'd please stand and raise your right hand and repeat after me in the pledge, if this will open for me. We pledge that we shall remember this unity end of the Second World War. Not only today, not only this week, this year, but always. Until we have built the world we have dreamed of and fought for. We pledge ourselves to build the unity of the people of the world. All races, all colors, all nationalities, all beliefs. To eliminate all traces of fascism from the earth. To build a deep and sincere international friendship. Among the people of the world. To keep a just, lasting peace. To eliminate want, frustration, and enforced idleness. We have come to confirm the unity of all people. To salute our comrades who have died. And pledge our word that skillful hands, keen brains and bold enthusiasm, shall never more be wasted in war. Now let's please remain standing for the Internationale, followed by the Star-Spangled Banner.
Yes. Yes. Isn't it interesting that the Chinese communists who were organizing the Asian Games had a very similar idea to us? And our flag ceremony looked pretty tame compared to theirs. I'll be honest with you. At their flag ceremony, we only had two. Well, I guess 5 flags. Towards the end, but their flag ceremony. I mean, let's look how many flags they had. How many flags did the Chinese have at their ceremony? Right, for the Asian Games. How many flags did they have? Let's take a look. How many flags they had? Sorry, gotta pull up the. All right. How many flags did they have? Right. How many flags did they have at their ceremony? Right. For the China Games, they had. That's at least 5 flags right there, and then there's like 7 flags or 6 flags there. That's quite an elaborate show that they got going on there compared to our show. Compared to them, our show was quite tame. I mean, look at that. Look at all those flags, right? And they're waving them back and forth and marching onto the stage and unfurling them and they're all in a uniform, right? We didn't even have uniforms. All we had was the matching red berets, and that was just at that one conference. We haven't done matching red berets. Look at all of them. They're all wearing matching bluish green shirts, and they're standing there and taking their oath. And look at this. Isn't it interesting that we had a similar idea? And look at that, right? We have never even thought about doing anything like that. I don't even know what that is, right? We haven't even thought about doing something like that, right? They got like cheerleaders and a marching band, or I don't know what that last bit was. Honestly, that one perplexes me. And they got like people running and cheerleaders, and it's quite an elaborate thing. But isn't it interesting that the Chinese communists at their Asian Games, they had an opening ceremony with flags and an oath? Isn't it interesting? Well, I think it's interesting as well. But there's a point to this, right? There's a point, which is that ceremonies like this, rituals like this have meaning. They have meaning. There's a reason that people do them. People do them because they create spiritual power. Let me repeat this. They have meaning because they create spiritual power. And I see the super chats that have come in. I'm seeing them as they come in. You got it. I saw there was a couple there. And I see that there's a Rumble rant about Nietzsche that came in from Jamie Turner about Nietzsche. I saw that as well. And nothing on the Rockfin, but these kind of rituals create spiritual power. And communism as a movement historically used to do these kind of rituals a lot. Now, communism historically has been associated with cold materialism, right? The rejection of all spiritual forces, the rejection of any form of idealism, any belief that thinking makes it so. But even then, that didn't stop the USSR Komsomols from wearing their red berets and marching and doing elaborate ceremonies. That didn't stop the Red Guards from doing all kinds of elaborate things. And regardless, what is the response every time we do one of our flag ceremonies? Whenever we have a CPI event, big conference, we always begin with a flag ceremony. And the response on social media, people lose their minds. It is like we are committing a crime against humanity. Oh my God, they can't be doing that. What? A flag ceremony? Oh my God, they're playing the Star Spangled Banner on the International, and they got the flag of this and the flag. Oh my God, they can't be doing that. No. It's like, I want to tie one of these people down. I want to kidnap one of these people and tie them down and make them watch the flag ceremony on loop. I want to get a bread tuber. I want to tie them to a chair, pry their eyes open, like in the movie Clockwork Orange. Just make them watch our ceremony on loop over and over again. And they'd be like, no, God. I'm just kidding. Of course, I have no desire to do any violence to anyone. But seriously, though, I really, I mean, it's hilarious. They watch this like, I mean, it was like, Newsweek did a story not about our conference, but about our fucking flag ceremony in Chicago because they were just so triggered by it. Oh my God, they can't be doing this. This isn't allowed. They're not allowed to do that. And they waved the flag of China and the Donetsk People's Republic and a Z. And oh my God, this can't be happening. It is not allowed. It's an abomination. Oh my God. No flag ceremonies. No. Ah! And they don't like the oath either. They hate the oath. I don't know why they don't like the oath. You'd think the oath would make a little bit more sense, but no, they don't like the pledge, the CPI Pledge of Unity. Oh my God. They're all up there taking a pledge. It's a cult. It's cult brainwashing. Oh my God. It's evil. They're taking a pledge. They're promising that all the people of the world, of all races, all nationalities, and all beliefs will come together. They're calling to eliminate the all traces of fascism from the earth. Clearly, they're neo-Nazis, right? I mean, that must be why they're calling for all the people of all the world and all the races to come together to eliminate fascism. Clearly, that's a neo-Nazi ritual, right? That's what neo-Nazis do. They try to bring people of different races and ethnicities together to destroy fascism. That's basically Hitler right there. I mean, they lose their minds over this stuff. This stuff scares the living bejesus out of them, right? The socially isolated internet leftist, right? They see this stuff and it like they shit their pants. It's like, this is not allowed. It's bad. It's cringe. It's blah, 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 blah. They like lose their minds that we dare do any ritual. I think that's a very good sign. I think that is a very, very good sign. That's a great sign. That is the best confirmation that we've had, in the lead up to our event in New York City on July 10th. I was talking to people in CPI and said, should we do a flag ceremony on July 10th? I mean, it's not going to be a whole convention. It's just going to be our small New York City event. It's not like a full convention or something. And I think it was Lumpia Logic said, hell yeah, let's do the whole thing. Let's do the whole 9 yards. Flag ceremony. I said, okie dokie. All right. I guess we will. And we did. And it was awesome. It was great. It was a great way to open. We had a minister from the church who gave us the space. He did an opening prayer. We did the Pledge of Unity, and then we did the flag ceremony. And we had the unified Korea flag, along with the Chinese flag. And, okay. We did it, and people love that. People get into it. It really gives them something. It gives people something you wouldn't normally get. I was in communist groups for a long time, and I always wanted to do stuff like this. And people, especially the older boomer communists, were always put off by stuff like this. They'd always say, people don't like that. No, that'll scare young people away. No, I don't think so. No, I don't think that's the case. I think when people join something, they want to be part of something. They want to have ceremony. They want to have ritual. They want to have belief. They want to be part of something. They want an identity. I think when people join something, they want something. And especially if they're becoming communists in the United States of America. When a country where communism is no, communism is bad, communism is forbidden. It takes a level of strength and courage to become a communist in America. So when people do become communists in America, they're going to want to attach themselves to something that looks like it has strength, that looks like it has some oomph behind it. It looks like it has some, it's not ashamed of what it is. It's proud of what it is. people wanted to fit in and join the crowd, they'd be a Democrat or a Republican. But if you're being a communist in the United States of America, in order to feel safe doing that with the other communists, you need to see that the other communists mean business. You need to see the other communists are serious. They give a shit. They're in it. They're proud. They're doing rituals. They're marching. They need to see that. You need to look like you have strength. You need to look like you have cohesion. You need to look like you're proud of what you're doing. Well, that brings me to the final point that I'm making tonight. It's not the final point, but it's like the last part of what I'm saying tonight in my opening remarks. It's not the final point, right? This is the last bit of my opening remarks. If you want something, you need to visualize it. If you want something, you need to visualize it. If you want to do something well, and many athletes will tell you this, if you want to play well, is one thing athletes will constantly do is visualize themselves playing well. And it works, right? Before the baseball game, the baseball players will sit there in their minds and visualize themselves throwing the ball the way they want to throw it, the way that the right way, the way they intend to throw it. Before the football game, the football players will sit there and visualize the play that they've practiced, that they want to do, and they'll visualize themselves doing it exactly right, exactly the way they want to achieve it. And you can laugh at this all you want, but this is true, and any athlete will tell you this. Some of the sports, like gymnastics, are all about discipline. In gymnastics, you're being judged by how well you go out and do the routine that you intended to do. How well you stuck and did it exactly as you intended to do. That's what they judge you on in gymnastics and in figure skating and in diving and in other sports. It's all about your ability to know what you're supposed to do and do the form exactly as intended. And that requires a lot of visualization. The art of the sport, and dance competitions the same way. It's not about your athletic ability. It's more about your ability to force your body to do what your mind wants to do. It is about conquering your body, your mind conquering your body and forcing your body to do what your mind has decided must be done. And in order to carry it out, those athletes, you can be sure that those dancers before their dance competition are constantly visualizing themselves doing the dance and doing it exactly right. And you can be sure that those divers before the diving competition are constantly visualizing themselves doing the diving and doing it exactly right. And you can be sure that those gymnasts before the gymnastics competition are constantly visualizing themselves doing the gymnastics and doing it exactly right. And you know what they're not doing? They're not visualizing all the ways it could go wrong. Now, they think about that. I'm sure they think about that, and they practice, and they make mistakes in their practice. They realize, oh, I should do it this way to avoid this mistake. But they're not constantly visualizing in their minds, how might it go wrong? It might go wrong this way, it might go wrong that way. No. They're constantly visualizing in their minds, how can I do it right? How can I do it right? That's what they're constantly visualizing with their brains. How can I do it right? How can I get it right? That's what they're constantly visualizing. And socialist movements in America, when I talk about optimistic socialism, I've emphasized that CPI, we're building an optimistic, constructive socialism, right? We're visualizing an optimistic, constructive socialism. A socialism that's not about what we're against. It's about what we're for. We're constantly visualizing what we're for. Coming up with practical ways we could advocate it and articulate it to people constantly. How can we advocate what we're for and articulate it to people? And how can we do so in a way that they like it? And look, I will say this, and this is a theme in my book that just came out today. Human beings have a spiritual side. I guarantee you, what I told you at the beginning of this presentation tonight about how I held my foot over the drain because I thought it would affect my math score, I know for a fact I'm not the only person who does things like this. We all do things like this because this is wired into us as human beings. This is part of our DNA. This is part of how human beings operate. We have a spiritual, religious side. And what I see with communists is I see a denial of that. I see many, many communists, including Bob Avakian, who insist they have no spiritual side. No. They don't have a spiritual side. No. They are purely materialist. They are purely rational. They have no spiritual and religious side. But the spiritual and religious side comes out. It's still there, but they deny its existence. In my book, I talk about how Bob Avakian's writings is full of idealist statements about how he feels about things. He says that countries like North Korea and Cuba aren't socialist because, quote, I wouldn't want to live in those countries. What does that mean? How do you measure that, Bob? How do we measure whether or not you want to live in the country? And how does that determine whether it's socialist or not? That's a purely idealist statement. But that's all over Bob's writings. And he's not the only one. There's many so-called communists in America that are making decisions about the world or making assessments of global politics based on how their gut feels, based on their response to aesthetics, rather than rational economic data. And the thing is, there is a place for spirituality. There's a place for ritual. There's a place for idealism. And there's a place for these things. And if you deny these things a place, they're going to come out anyway. But they're going to come out in a way that's not calculated or controlled. Look, if you're organizing a political organization, spirituality, idealism, these things are very important. Look, if you're having an event and somebody walks in to the event and they don't get a good vibe, they ain't coming back. They ain't joining the group. That is purely about feelings. That is purely a spiritual question. If people walk into the room at your event and the vibe they get from the room is that they're not wanted there, or the people there are awkward or strange, or they feel out of place, they're getting out of there. And that is not a material question. There's no yardstick through which you can measure to make sure people feel good when they come to your event. There is no, there's no, like checklist you can check off. It is purely about the atmosphere you create. This is purely a spiritual question. If people walk into the room at your event and they like it, they stay. And if people walk into the room at the event and they get an feeling, they leave. and how you make sure that they feel warm and welcome and appreciated, and how you make sure they don't get an feeling, that is not something you can draw a math problem around. You can't fake it. If the people in your group are warm and welcoming and kind and friendly, you will come to the event and you'll like it. And if the people in the group are hunched over and old and paranoid and demoralized and hopeless, then they're not going to come join your group. And that is an idealist or spiritual question. That is not a material question. It's about the atmosphere you can create. You could spend $1 million on an event. You could spend $1 million on an event, have all kinds of elaborate technology. You could even hire a team of people to be there, a team of actors to be there and pretend to be members of your group. But if their heart isn't in it, they don't feel connected to it, if they're reluctant, if they're uncomfortable, people are going to walk into your event. They're going to feel uncomfortable too, and they're not going to come back. It's purely a spiritual question. Whereas whether or not Cuba is a socialist country or not is not a spiritual question. It has nothing to do with how Cuba makes me feel. Cuba could make me feel like shit, but if the banks, factories, and industries and the centers of economic power are functioning according to a central plan for the good of society and not for the profits of a wealthy few, not production organized for profit, it's socialism. Whether or not to support Russia in Ukraine is not a question of how Putin makes you feel. And in fact, that's the last thing you should ever be basing it on, because if you consume American media, they're going to do everything they can to frame Putin in the most negative light. Some things have to be decided based on the objective reality of the situation. And some things have to be decided and carried out, especially the operations of building a group, holding a group together, have to be carried out on a spiritual idealist plane. And this is what the communist movement in the United States has an unhealthy relationship with. They make decisions based on spiritual and ideal questions when they shouldn't, because they don't acknowledge that they have them. And they deny economics and go with their gut in instances where they shouldn't. And they don't pay attention to the importance of ritual and the importance of visualizing what you're for, not just what you're against. Right? This is all very important. If we want a socialist America, if we want to see America reborn as a socialist society, we should constantly be talking about America reborn as a socialist society, what that would look like. We should constantly be coming up with examples to articulate this and programs, policy solutions like our 4-point plan that would be part of the transition toward that. We should constantly be able to say to our coworkers, well, what if all these young people that are unemployed, what if the government hired them to start building highways and bridges and high-speed railway and nuclear power plants? What if they brought the military home from overseas and put them to work reconstructing this country to look beautiful? What if our oil and gas, all the money they make from it, wasn't going into the pockets of a bunch of rich corporations, but was going to make the country wealthier? What if we had a social media app that wasn't designed to make people, hopeless and pessimistic and fight with each other? We had a social media app that was designed to make people confident and smarter and physically fit. We need to constantly be coming up with ways to articulate what we want, not what we're against, what we want. And we have to explain it to people in ways that it doesn't sound like some far-off, inconceivable thing. Some silly pipe dream. It sounds like something that could actually happen. The government could actually hire millions of unemployed. Roosevelt created the Works Progress Administration, hired millions of Americans to rebuild the country during the Great Depression. So why can't we do something like that now? Other countries, Norway, for example, they've nationalized their oil and gas, right? Why can't we do that? Right? China is building high-speed railway all over the world. Why can't we hire Chinese corporations to build some high-speed railway here in America? Think about it. And you can call this silly idealism all you want, but if you don't know what you want, you're not going to get it. If you only know what you don't want and you're constantly thinking about what you don't want, you just might get it. But if you're constantly thinking about what it is you want and different ways to achieve it, and you're constantly communicating to other people, not just with your words, but with your whole being, with your whole body, with your whole presentation, if you're constantly communicating to other people that you want something, there's a good chance you'll get it. There's a good chance you'll get it. I've told people before, if you're looking for a romantic partner, the first thing you need clarity in your mind about what you want. Because there's a lot of people I've met over the years, they want a girlfriend, they want a boyfriend, they want a husband, they want a wife. But what kind of wife they want? I don't know. I'm lonely. Well, that's the problem. You don't really know what you want. You need to go do some work, my brother. You need to go do some work, my sister, and find out what you actually want from a partner. Dig into your soul, your psyche, your desires. What would you want from a partner? What would a partner, a spouse, a romantic person in your life, what would that look like for you? What would it look like? What would it look like in a way that would make you happy? And until you get clarity on that, you're not going to be successful in the romantic world. But once you get clarity on that, once you are clear about what it is you want, what a partner that would make you happy would be like for you, I think success is not that far off. And so that brings me to what I've been thinking about lately, which is the Center for Political Innovation's National Conference coming up December 2nd. I got to tell you, and forgive me, Elizabeth, if you're embarrassed a little bit, but her and I have been talking about it a lot. You know, she's on the West Coast. She's out there in Portland. I'm here in New York City. And we have been on the phone talking a lot about what our amazing conference, December 2nd in Portland, Oregon, is going to be like. I'm already having different ideas about different displays we can have. We've got the location picked out, the venue, and we picked a date that's far off to give us enough time to fundraise and to give us enough time to get everything in order. And we're visualizing it. I'm constantly visualizing in my mind. How can we make that event a success? How can we fill that hall with 200 people there to learn all about the Center for Political Innovation? How can we give people a dynamic presentation that will teach them anti-imperialist politics, teach them revolutionary stuff? How can we do that? And I've been visualizing that. I've been thinking of what we could do and having different ideas come into my mind. But I realized that I can't do this alone. And I knew that. But the conference is still pretty far off. No, you don't have to be a member. It's a public event. The conference is still pretty far off. December 2nd is pretty far down the road. But if we're going to make our event a success, and we have a plan for outreach, we have a plan for promotion, we have a plan for the event itself, but if it's going to be a success, this community needs to pull together to make it a success. We need to pull together, and we're already pulling together. Fundraising is going on. People are volunteering, but we can all pull together spiritually to make it a success. If you all want to do something for our community, don't do it for me, right? Don't do it for me. I almost said do it for me, but no, don't do it for me. If you want to do something for this community, I want you to find a way to put your foot on the drain for December 2nd. Find a way to exert yourself, to create focus, to channel your energy toward making December 2nd a success. Find a ritual. Make a commitment to yourself around something completely unrelated that you think will be connected to December 2nd. Hold your foot over the drain and stop the gargling in the shower. And focus yourself on December 2nd. Dare to win a world beyond imperialism in Portland, Oregon. Focus yourself on that event being dynamic, on that event being high level, emotional, a moment of re-energization and rebirth, resurrection for the Center for Political Innovation. A moment that sets a tone of energy for years to come. A moment that fills all of us in CPI, all of us in the anti-imperialist movement, all of us who want a better future for the working class, fills all of us with hope. I want you to commit to yourself. Make a commitment to yourself. Make a promise to yourself. Make a sacrifice. Make a commitment that you will do something. You will do something. You will exert yourself in some way. You will exert yourself in some way and you will focus in some way for the purpose of making the National Convention of the Center for Political Innovation a moment that explodes energy and spiritual power into the anti-imperialist movement in the United States. That you will do something, you will make some kind of commitment in your life with the intent of channeling your energy and your focus and your power into making December 2nd a success. And even if you can't be there, And even if you can't donate any money to make it happen, even if you can't do anything but this, make a commitment to yourself of some kind. Exert some kind of willpower, some kind of focus, some kind of energy on CPI having a successful conference on December 2nd. Focus on it in some way, in some shape or form, in whatever form it means for you. Make a commitment to yourself, make an exertion, make a focus for the purpose of the CPI conference becoming successful. And if all of us can do that in one way or another, in whatever way we can do, if we can all hold our foot over the drain and stop the gargling, and so many of us are doing it, I believe we're going to have a kick-ass conference. No question about it. And on that note, folks, names and locations. I will call you out as I see you. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Woo! Names and locations. I am pumped. I am pumped. I really enjoyed giving those opening remarks. I don't know why. They felt great. I feel great having given those opening remarks. They put a smile on my face. They put a bolt of electricity and lightning into my soul. I am so glad to be here with you guys tonight. Seriously, you guys are great. If it wasn't for these nightly streams, I would lose my mind. I love you all so much from the bottom of my heart. I mean, Mariah in North Carolina says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, to give a future and hope." I got Steve in Boston, Martin, Liverpool, California, Rice from Adelaide, Australia, Panos in Greece, Colin in Greensboro, Chester in England, Steve in Boston, Lori in Oklahoma, Balthazar in Oakland, Patch in Arizona, Colin in Greensboro. Welcome. Truth Teller in Canada, Alex from Brazil, Zach in Seattle, Molly McGuire in Orange County, St. Louis, Timoshenko, Anthony in Detroit, St. David's, Bermuda, Chicago. Great streams. I learned so much. Thank you, Gabby, and shout out to you for your great morning messages. Jay in New York City. Welcome, Jay. Chris in Salt Lake City, Kiwi Dave in New Zealand, St. David's, Bermuda, Victory Gin in New Mexico. There we go. All righty. Names and locations. We got Alex F. in Mississippi. Molly McGuire says Lightning Boat. We got Ron Rechnitz in Israel. Alex F. in Mississippi. Temple City, California. Hanson, Ontario. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. I am so glad to be here with all of you tonight. Now, it is a little bit of a tradition now that I'm playing a little bit of music on every live stream now. And so I've been playing different types of music. So tonight I am going to play, I've played it on here, I think once before. But I'm going to play a folk song on here. And it's a performance of this folk song at an event of the Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist-Leninist, our friends in the United Kingdom. And it's a performance of a song about the Diggers. The Diggers were a group of socialists, socialist peasants who launched an uprising in Britain in 1649. During the English Civil War, there were various factions that were fighting against the king. One of those factions was called the Diggers. And the Diggers wanted to create a socialist society. They were, peasant utopian socialists. During the English Civil War, there were various factions fighting against the king, aligned with Oliver Cromwell. There were the Levelers, and then there was a faction called the Diggers, the True Levelers. And they were peasants, and they rose up and they seized St. George's Hill, and they turned St. George's Hill into a cooperative, and they were brutally put down by the wealthy and rich and powerful. And it's considered one of a major, socialist event in British history. And so we're going to put on the Diggers song. And it was just, this was a moment where, and they were religious utopian socialists, but they launched an uprising in 1649, and they're remembered. I think there was an anarchist group, the Diggers, that named themselves after them. The Diggers, or the True Levelers, they were called. They were, a group of peasant revolutionaries who seized one hill in Britain temporarily. And this is a beautiful song that was written about them. So I'm going to put it on, and it's being performed. This is a performance of it at a communist event in the UK.
Enjoy the food. Anyway, this first, we're going to do a couple of songs. This is the first one. It comes from the English Civil War, and it's about the Diggers, who were a group of peasant farmers who, after the victory of the Civil War, moved onto common land in what is now a very plush golf course in Weybridge, called St George's Hill. It's called the Diggers song, or The World Turned Upside Down. I've just had to change the string, which is absolutely typical. So it's constantly going out too. In 1649, to St George's Hill, a ragged band they called the Diggers came to show the people's will. They defied the landlords, they defied their lords. They were the dispossessed, reclaiming what was theirs. We come in peace, they said, to reap and sow. We come to make the world in common and to make this wasteland grow. This world divided we shall make whole, so it can be a common treasury for all. The sin of property we do disdain. No man has any right to buy and sell the earth for private gain. By theft and murder, they stole the land. Now everywhere the walls spring up at their command. They make the laws to aid us well. Their clergy dazzle us with heaven, or they damn us into hell. We will not follow the God they serve, the God of greed who feeds the rich while poor men starve. We work, we eat together, we need no swords. We will not bow to the landlords or pay rent unto the laws. We are free men, though we are poor. Regardless, Lord, stand up for freedom, stand up now. From the men of property, the orders came. They sent their hired men and troopers to wipe out the Diggers' grain, tear down their cottages, destroy their corn. They were dispersed, only the vision lingers on. Ye poor, take courage, ye rich, take care. This earth was made a common treasury for everyone to share. All people divided, all people one. They came in peace, the orders came to cut them down. They came in peace, the orders came to cut them down.
Yep, that is a song commemorating the Diggers. And then there's another song about them that's much older that was made maybe like 100 years or so after the Diggers uprising. It's not an actual song of the Diggers, but I'll put that one on as well. That's kind of a darker English song, kind of commemorating the Diggers from like the 1700s. And so I'm going to put that one on as well. But yeah, it's important to talk about these things. And, I mean, the book Socialism, Utopian and Scientific by Frederick Engels, one of the most important books in the history of Marxism. It spends the whole first chapter praising these various utopian socialist movements because they were very much the beginning of what eventually gave birth to scientific socialism. They were the beginning of people just seeing the injustice of the new capitalist world. And Robert Owen, who built New Harmony in Indiana, prior to that, he built New Lanark in Scotland. You had Franz Fanon, no, not Franz Fanon. Saint Simon? You had Fourier. You had many different. You had Babeuf. You had many different socialists that emerged in Europe as capitalism was emerging. They said something wasn't right about this. A lot of them were motivated by religion or just moral outrage, and they tried to build model communities and model cities to oppose, to kind of present a different way of living. And they did their best, and they paved the way for what eventually happened with the working class movement and communism. And it's very important to know this history. So I'm now going to put on another song in honor of the Diggers uprising. And this is a much older song. I think that song I just played for you was written in the 1970s. This song I'm going to play for you now was written in the 1700s. So a little bit of a time difference there. It was written in the 1700s to kind of show honor and commemorate the Diggers uprising. If I can just get it to, there we go. All right, we'll put that one on.
You noble diggers all stand up now, stand up now. You noble diggers all stand up now. The wasteland to maintain, sing cavaliers by name. Your digging do disdain, and your persons all disdain. Stand up now, diggers all. Your houses they pull down, stand up now, stand up now. Your houses they pull down, stand up now. Your houses they pull down to fright poor men in town. But the gentry must come down, and the poor shall wear the crown. Stand up now, diggers all. The South will is their law, stand up now, stand up now. The South will is their law, stand up now. Since tyranny came in, they count it now no sin to make a jail of gin and to serve poor men therein. Stand up now, diggers all. The gentry are all round, stand up now, stand up now. The gentry are all round, stand up now. The gentry are all round, on each side they are found. Their wisdom so profound, for to Jesus soft as sound. Stand up now, diggers all. The lawyers they can join, stand up now, stand up now. The lawyers they can join, stand up now. To arrest you they advise, such fury they devise. But the devil in them lies, and has blinded both their eyes. Stand up now, diggers all. The clergy they come in, stand up now, stand up now. The clergy they come in, stand up now. The clergy they come in, and they say it is a sin that we should now begin our freedom to freedom now, diggers all. The club is all their law, stand up now, stand up now. The club is all their law, stand up now. The club is all their law to keep poor folk in awe, but they no vision saw to maintain such a law. Glory now, diggers all.
So there we go. A nice musical interlude. So yeah, we got to talk about the Diggers and the uprising of 1649. All right. So now I'm going to start answering people's questions. We got 3 Rumble rants that have come in. The first one comes from Delta V. And he says, if Donald Trump got in again and became some kind of FDR 2.0, would that be enough to save U.S. capitalism? Now, that's an interesting question, right? If Donald Trump got in again and became some kind of FDR 2.0, would that be enough to save U.S. capitalism? There's a lot to unpack in that question. So I'm going to have to come at this from a number of different angles, right? FDR, as president, was a Bonapartist. He ruled on behalf of one section of his class. And there was a struggle between the factory owners, the National Association of Manufacturers, the industrialists like Henry Ford, and the bankers, the Rockefellers in particular. And as this fight intensified, it became very clear that the factory owners, they wanted to overthrow Roosevelt. They had people in the military who agreed with them. But the Eastern establishment, the Rockefellers, the British government, they wanted Roosevelt to stay in power. And so Roosevelt, as he faced the attempted military coup against him, the infamous business plot, he was forced to enter a strategic alliance with the labor unions because the labor unions were against the factory owners. And the labor unions were fighting the factory owners. The factory owners were who wanted to remove Roosevelt to end the labor unrest. So Roosevelt hired a lot of unemployed people. He took the side of the labor movement and he defended the sit-down strike wave of 1937. And all of that he resulted in the creation of unemployment insurance and Social Security, and hired the unemployed, and with a vast government hiring project that was massive. I mean, they hired dentists to provide dental care for children. I mean, they created a national theater project. They had paintings in the post offices all over the country. They built highways. It was massive government hiring of people. And he did all of this as a way of providing for people during the Great Depression, as a way of having the working class on his side, to have his back against the coup plotters. So you're asking, if Donald Trump took office again and did something like this, would it save American capitalism? And my answer is no. And my answer is no. First of all, because what Roosevelt didn't save American capitalism either. World War II saved American capitalism. The Great Depression was not ended by Roosevelt hiring the unemployed. People got jobs, people got food in their stomachs, but the problem of capitalism, rooted in the problem of overproduction, still continued. Capitalism was not saved by Social Security. Again, the suffering that people had was alleviated, but capitalism was not saved. The only way the Great Depression ended was with a massive war. And World War II and the mass destruction of every major city outside the United States in the Western world, of Japan, of China. I mean, it's just massive destruction that rebooted the global economy. And it was after World War II that suddenly we had the post-World War II economic expansion. So the idea that if Donald Trump got elected and came to office and started doing Rooseveltian things, expanded the welfare state, aligned with labor unions against employers, which he would be very unlikely to do. But if Donald Trump were to do such a thing, were to take dramatic Bonapartist measures in the face of widespread opposition from his class, that would save capitalism. from the problem of overproduction, the crisis created by artificial intelligence? I would say no. I would say no, because even when Roosevelt did Roosevelt things, it didn't save capitalism. That was his intent, but it didn't work. And in fact, many economists show that the Great Depression, in terms of businesses and how the stock market was doing and such, the Great Depression got worse as a result of Roosevelt's reforms. He made sure people were taken care of. People's suffering didn't end, but the actual economic downturn was not fixed by Roosevelt's economic reforms. Now, what is true is that the boom that was created, that came after the Second World War, really benefited because of what Roosevelt did, because Roosevelt had built the highways, Roosevelt had funded the scientists, Roosevelt had electrified big chunks of the country with the Tennessee Valley Authority. And the boom that happened post-World War II would not have been as successful of a boom, right? If the industrial workers didn't have unions to go on strike in the post-war strike wave and win those high wages in the steel mills and in the auto plants, if Tennessee didn't have electricity, if the highways in Key West, the Key West Highway hadn't been built, if LaGuardia Airport in New York City hadn't been constructed, the post-World War II economic expansion in the USA would have been much smaller. No question about it. So Roosevelt helped set the stage for the post-World War II economic expansion. And Roosevelt also alleviated people's suffering. But as far as saving capitalism from the crisis of overproduction, no, I would say no. So I hope that answers your question, Delta V. The next question is, this person says, R. Palm Dutt criticized FDR's New Deal and outlined fascist tendencies in the book. It's a great book. Can you recommend insights? Yes, of course. Now, this book is called Fascism and Social Revolution by R. Palm Dutt. And I constantly recommend this book. It is the book to read about fascism in the 1930s. It explains the economics of fascism, how fascism is rooted in the problem of overproduction and the tendency of the falling rate of profit. And fascism is an attempt to stabilize capitalism with an authoritarian state and degrowth. And that is what fascism is. Now, what people need to understand is that this book was written in 1935, right? This is during Roosevelt's first term, right? Let me check here. Yeah, it was first published in 1934. It was first published in June of 1934. So Roosevelt took office in 1932, right? And Roosevelt's first term, his first New Deal, at the very beginning of his term, he passed Glass-Steagall. He separated financial banking from commercial banking. But the National Industrial Recovery Act, when it first started, was not what it was later. Okay? We think of Roosevelt, we associate Roosevelt with the Works Progress Administration. He didn't create that until the summer of 1935. We associate Roosevelt with Social Security. He didn't create that until 1937. 1938, I think, with the Fair Labor Standards Act, right? That's where he first created a minimum wage, with the Fair Labor Standards Act, the Wagner Act, legalizing the right of workers to join unions. That wasn't until 1935. All of the stuff we associate with Roosevelt, all the progressive stuff, didn't really start until 1935, 1936. Roosevelt's first term was very much... he was still trying to be a centrist and trying to be somewhat of a strongman, and that the Communist Party accurately pointed out that the attempts to regiment industry that went on in 1933 and 1934, they were somewhat fascistic. And I quote in my book a direct personal account by Nelson Peary from his autobiography, Black Fire. In his autobiography, he describes how one of the things that Roosevelt did in his first term was he killed half the cows in the country. I bet you didn't know about this, but the U.S. Department of Agriculture went around to every farm and they killed half the cows. and they buried them, and they poured lime on the dead cows' bodies before they buried them to make sure no one could dig them up and eat the meat. It would be poisoned. And they did this. It was a degrowth method, right? You're killing half the cattle in order to inflate the price of cattle as a degrowth method to stabilize capitalism. And I quote Nelson Peary describing how he remembers when the government men came to the farms in Minnesota where he was living and killed half the cows in town, right? That was degrowth. And it was to drive up the price of beef. And so, yes, during the regimenting of industry, there were many things that were being done in Roosevelt's early administration before this book was written. In the first couple of years of his administration, when he was rolling out the Blue Eagle, it was called the Blue Eagle, and it was the National Industrial Recovery Act. There were many things he did that were of a degrowth and fascistic nature. The progressive stuff Roosevelt did was later when he was facing the threat of being overthrown, when the Communist Party and the labor movement was aligning with him. That was during the later years, during the Popular Front era, and during his second term. His second term was when Roosevelt did the best. 1936, he was reelected, and that was when he really did his amazing stuff. He started to scale things back, during World War II, but his second term, you listen to the speech he gave in Madison Square Garden. Maybe we can put that on. I think we can put on Roosevelt's Madison Square Garden speech. It'll be hard for me to listen to it without crying, but here, I'm not going to put the whole thing on because it's a half hour long. We don't have time for that. But I'll just put on this clip of Roosevelt's. This is Roosevelt when he was running for re-election in 1936. He would not have won if it weren't for the Communist Party. The Communist Party organized the CIO unions to support Roosevelt, and they went all out. And Roosevelt got reelected by a landslide in 1936, but the Communist Party had his back, and all the major capitalists were saying, if Roosevelt gets reelected, we're going to lay you off from your job. And he barely raised anything near the amount of money that the Republicans raised that year, but he still won because he was enacting popular economic reforms, and he'd hired millions of people, and the Communist Party was out in the street, and the CIO was supporting him, and Roosevelt got reelected in a landslide despite not having anywhere near the amount of money his opponents raised. And this is the speech he gave in Madison Square Garden. This is a clip from his famous Madison Square Garden speech, which is really one of the best speeches. We reprinted it in our CPI educational manual. And here, this is a clip from it.
For nearly 4 years now, you have had an administration which, instead of twirling its thumbs, has rolled up its sleeves. And I can assure you that we will keep our sleeves rolled up. We had to struggle with the old enemies of peace, business and financial monopoly, speculation, reckless banking, class antagonism, sectionalism, war profiteering. They had begun to consider the government of the United States as a mere appendage to their own affairs. And we know now that government by organized money is just as dangerous as government by organized mob. Never before in all our history have these forces been so united against one candidate as they stand today. They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred. I should like to have it said of my first administration that in it the forces of selfishness and of lust for power met their match. I should like to have it said, wait a minute, I should like to have it said of my second administration that in it these forces met their master.
There you go. That was Roosevelt throwing all in with the labor movement against Wall Street, against, you heard it, against war profiteering, class antagonism. Yeah, there you go. There you go. All righty. All righty. So the next question we've got, it's a Rumble rant, is the other night you talked about cancel culturing weak people versus strong people. It seemed very Nietzschean. As a Nietzsche fan, I liked it. Well, I'm not a fan of Nietzsche. And I've read The Destruction of Reason by George Lukács, which is a very good dissection of Nietzsche. And the problem with Nietzsche, and that Nietzsche is probably the most articulate representative of what you call philosophical irrationalism, is that Nietzsche, philosophical irrationalism, right? There are two schools of philosophy. Again, just like we have materialism versus idealism, we have rationalism versus irrationalism. Rationalists argue that there is order in the universe and that things like the laws of physics, things like mathematics, show that the universe is based on order. Nietzsche, on the other hand, and the irrationalist school say the universe is defined by chaos and that order is simply a temporary illusion. There is no order in the universe. Irrationalists argue that there is no ethical and moral code. That ethical and moral codes are something invented by powerful people to control weaker people, etc., and that you can make your own moral and ethical code simply by willing it. And Nietzsche, of course, he hated Christianity, and in his writing against Christianity, he said that Christianity was bad because he said it was just like socialism. He said that socialism was just a new form of Christianity. It was just Christianity dressed up. It was the cry of the weak against the strong. Well, socialism is not the cry of the weak against the strong. It's not about envy, right? That's some Jordan Peterson distortion. Socialism is the call to rationally organize the means of production and centralize man's power so that we can achieve greater things than ever. The difference between socialism and capitalism, as Frederick Engels puts it in Socialism, Utopian and Scientific, the difference between the two is that capitalism is like a thunderstorm. All right, the lightning goes here, the lightning goes there, based on whatever's going on. Socialism is a light switch. When you turn on the light switch, it's concentrating the power of production strategically to generate the greatest output. You never know when lightning's going to strike. It's the chaos of the market, the anarchy of production. But when you turn that light switch on, that electrical energy is channeled in and the light comes on. That's the difference between capitalism and socialism. Socialism is about rationally organizing and centrally planning human productive power so that we can make great achievements. It's not about envy and jealousy. It's not about resentment. And it's not about the redistribution of income, right? Socialism is about changing property relations so the means of production function in a rational way. It's not about taxing people's income. It's not redistribution of wealth, right? It is changing property relations. That's what socialism is. That's important to understand. Friedrich Nietzsche, basically, he believed that any form of populism, any notion of a mass movement was dangerous because, the great are great because they're individuals and they stand out from the crowd. The great are great because they don't connect to other people and they don't have empathy for other people. He wrote about the blonde beast. I will say, though, that, when you talk about strength and weakness, right? I mean, again, all this Ayn Rand stuff, right? There's a lot of truth in it on the individual level, not on a macro scale. And that's its power with people. We all know people who can't get their shit together and resent their friends who can. Right? We all know people like that. We all know people who can't get their shit together, don't have the willpower to do it. And then instead of going, oh, how can I learn from my friend who's successful? They go, oh, I hate my friend. And they're just jealous of them. Right? Well, that doesn't apply to the billionaire monopolists who run capitalism and the working class. That applies to you and your friend. But Ayn Rand and the philosophical irrational stuff is very good at taking. There are many real life examples of things like this and applying them. And one of the themes in Ayn Rand is weak villains, right? Villains who are motivated to do their bad, not by strength and narcissism and a lust for power, but rather because they don't have enough strength to stand up to the mob. That they're weak and they betray their friends and they sell out and they collapse because they don't have strength of character. And I would argue that, yes, that's actually very true on a personal level. Weak people are not good friends, because being a friend to somebody, when a friend is having a rough time, you got to have their back, even if it's not a popular thing to do. A good friend will tell you when you're in the wrong and tell you when you're making a mistake, even if you don't want to hear it, right? That it takes strength to be a good friend. Whereas emotionally weak people make backstabbers, and they make not good friends. They make fair weather friends, and again, that's an Ayn Rand theme that is true in individual life. But I will say, and we need to define strength and weakness, I mean, there are plenty of people I know that would be considered to be disabled that are very strong people, meaning that they are loyal to their friends, meaning they don't back down, meaning that they have principles that they stick to, and maybe they suffer from some mental illness. Maybe they are, physically disabled in some way, but regardless, they are strong people. They have a strong character, right? And then there are plenty of people I know that are perfectly, quote unquote, healthy mentally, whatever that means, and perfectly able-bodied, that are very, very weak and fragile people who just go along with the crowd, are afraid to stand out, or not creative, or not. Every time they have an original thought, they suppress it for fear they might, get punished by the mob out there. So, it's important to talk about what we mean when we mean strength, right? Well, I mean, what do we mean when we mean strength? We mean strength of character. We mean, we mean people that, people that mean what they say and, have strength of character. And look, I mean, and I'm going to have to give very short answers to some of the super chats that came in, with all due respect to the people who sent them. I don't want to relive and rehash. We have rehashed endlessly the events of a year ago, and we're done with that. We just have to move on. They're over. But, the people who have betrayed me tend to be weak people. And, they were whiners before. They were whiners and complainers, and I was always dragging them along, to do stuff. And I don't do that shit no more. No chasing after people is my new rule, right? If you're in this and you've proven you have strength, you can withstand it, I'm glad you're here. But if you ain't, you're not strong enough to be part of this. I'm not going to drag you along so that you can then complain later about, he made me drive my car. Oh, shut up. I didn't make you drive your car. All righty. So there you go. Those are the answers to the Rumble rants. No, I know what you're getting at, Jamie, about the Nietzsche thing. I just don't agree with you about Nietzsche. And yeah, I mean, I can see how you could see this in a Nietzschean way. But all right. So now we're going to do the super chats because I don't see any Rockfin tips. So there we go. All right. The DPRK reopened its border despite still being at war with the U.S. What does this mean? Will people start infiltrating the country? Well, first of all, Americans can't go there. The U.S. travel ban on North Korea was renewed by Joe Biden, which is absolutely ridiculous. It is a ridiculous travel ban. If you go to North Korea, they say they will turn off your passport. And that's not constitutional. And someone needs to challenge it. Someone needs to just try to go to North Korea on their passport. And when they try to do that, then challenge it in a U.S. court, because there's no legality. You have the freedom to travel. The Supreme Court has said you have the freedom to travel. It's a ridiculous piece of legislation. And the State Department doesn't have the right to tell you you're not allowed to go someplace. They just don't have the right to do that. I mean, it's not even a law from Congress. Just the State Department says, oh, yeah, U.S. passports don't work in this country anymore. Bullshit. But what this means is this is because of COVID. North Korea wasn't letting people into the country. It wasn't allowing tourism into the country because of COVID. They've lifted that, right? Which that's what that means. And it's a good thing that they lifted it. It's a good thing that they lifted it because they need tourism and they need people to come into the country, but Americans still can't go there, which is unfortunate, but that's just how things are. I oppose that. I think Americans should be able to visit North Korea, right? Why not? Right. I mean, the first step toward peace with any country is doing business with each other. So there you go. I am for a peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula, and a step in that direction. Is that we allow Americans to travel there, have freedom to travel. It's pretty basic stuff. All right. Now, if people want to send more super chat questions, please do keep me talking, right? The longer I talk on here, right? The night is young. It just became midnight here. I might have to work in the morning, depends on what my employers text me that I need to do or, what I'm doing tomorrow. But, I got my new UN press badge, just picked it up today at the UN headquarters. So that's taken care of. And, when my employers, text me in the morning, so I could go for a couple more hours if people want to. So, send me a super chat, get me talking about what it is you want me to talk about. Send me another Rumble rant, send me a Rockfin tip, whatever you want me to talk about. Now is the time to get me talking. I am here to answer your questions. So there we go. All right. Next, we got, what are your thoughts on centrism and centrists? The horse thing. Fellow Traveler did a video on why centrism is right wing. Well, centrism just means, whatever the extreme positions are in your society, you're walking the middle of the road. That's what centrism means. It means you don't want to commit strongly to any position. You don't want to take the risk of committing strongly to a position. It's trying to keep safe. And what's weird is that that's increasingly being hard. It's increasingly being very, very hard to do because the country is so polarized. If you're in an extreme red state and you start talking like a woke Democrat, or if you're in a Republican or a Democrat stronghold and you start talking like a Trumper and you're wearing your MAGA hat around, it's going to be difficult. And it's harder to be a centrist now. But centrism is generally the politics of non-commitment. It almost requires a level of not caring. Now, that said, right, I'm accused sometimes of being a centrist on social issues because I don't care. I just don't want to talk about the trans thing. I just don't want to talk about gay marriage and sex. I don't want to have the sex worker debate. I just don't care. Right? I just don't care. Now, that's not a centrist position. It's that I don't care. I take very strong positions on economics. I take very strong positions on foreign policy. So I'm not a centrist, but on some issues, I just don't care about them. And I think to be a centrist on everything, you kind of have to just kind of not care about everything, which there are plenty of people that don't care, right? I mean, but I think to really be a centrist, you have to not care. So that's my critique of centrism, is that in order to really be one, you have to kind of not care on some level. And, if you really care, what is it? I hope if you're studying to be a doctor, I hope that you become a fanatical doctor, because if I had a heart attack right now and they were rushing me to the emergency room and they gave me the choice, do you want me to have someone operate on you who's, just got mediocre grades in medical school, doesn't really care that much about being a doctor? Or would you want a fanatical doctor, an obsessive doctor to operate on you? Somebody who knows every in and out about exactly how to perform the surgery, top grades in medical school, an obsessive surgeon. I would want the obsessive surgeon to operate on me, right? To save my life. And when it comes to politics, you should want the same thing. right? I mean, when our country is facing a big emergency, we should want a fanatical solution. We should want a fanatic, somebody who's so dedicated to solving the problem that they seem like a maniac. They are obsessed with politics. They know the ins and outs, and they have a very specific understanding of the world and how it works. That's who we should want to operate on this. Not somebody who just takes the middle of the road, not just somebody who doesn't care. So take that for what you will. All right. I believe some of your detractors on the left do not hate you. Dude, I have spoken about the drama last year. First of all, I made a video when I came back in November last year, debunking the whole thing, point by point, right? Pointing out I'm really not even accused of that much anyway. If you really look at the details, I wasn't even really accused of that much. Did I make a mistake? Was I, did I bring my personal life into things in ways I shouldn't have? Did I overshare with some people? Yes, right? And I apologize for that. And I've taken measures to get control of myself to make sure I don't make such mistakes again. But other than that, I didn't do anything. No, I'm not running a cult. No, I'm not, I didn't force anyone to lose their job. No, I didn't trick someone into getting addicted to heroin so I could control them. No, I didn't do anything like that. And, the whole thing is bullshit, right? And I made a whole video. I'll get to that. I made a whole video showing that basically the allegations, there are no allegations, right? To begin with. I mean, the allegations themselves were, I had some inappropriate conversations with people and that's it, and some a consensual thing happened with one person. And I had some naughty conversations with some people. Do I regret that? Yes. Did I make a mistake by bringing my personal life in and engaging with consenting adults in ways that probably, I should have been strategic and used better judgment and not done? Sure. Other than that, the whole thing is complete bullshit. And some of the stuff in there is just ridiculous. Some of it's straight up lies and it's stupid. I made a video showing that, right? And it's long. And I debunked, they wrote this whole book long manifesto about me, even though they didn't accuse me of very much at all. And I debunked all of it. So that should have been it, right? And ever since then, it's come up. And now we know that they got paid to do it, right? Now one of them has admitted they got fucking paid to do it, right? Now tell me, folks, what does one need in order to buy heroin? Money. So just putting that out there. What do people need to buy heroin with? And who is one of the most desperate people to get money ever? Heroin addicts. And what do we now know? We now know that they got paid. One of them has admitted they got paid. One of the people who signed the stupid hit piece on me has admitted that they got paid. So this was a paid operation against me. We know that much. It didn't even really accuse me of anything to begin with. It was just a long piece saying I'm an asshole, basically. I'm an asshole. I'm a narcissist. I'm all these things. Well, whatever. You know what I mean? So, and then it was like, with all the money they threw at it and all the people they assembled to try and demean and deny my character, they still couldn't even really accuse me of very much. Anyway, with all of that, with all the money and all the work and all the people they assembled, they called up people I went to college with and tried to get them to sign on to it, and they wouldn't. They talked to all kinds of people. They went around. They talked to, I can't even tell you. I don't want to name names because then that brings the person to the drama. They went to everyone I've ever spoken to. I swear. I mean, I almost wonder if there's somebody I got into an elevator one time and they dug that up. I mean, it was like they went to every person I've ever been connected to in any way and tried to get them to sign on to this. And they could only get about 6 people. And all of them, they pressed them to come up with every nasty thing they could say about me. And they all like the things they could come up with were lame as hell. He made me drive one time, he had us practice maintaining eye contact with people to show respect. I mean, it was just ridiculous, right? They couldn't come up with anything. Right. And so I debunked the whole thing. And that was back in November. And now we know they got paid. Right. And now not only has one of the people retracted it and said, quote, "We lied." So even that was a fucking lie. Even the hit piece they came up with that didn't accuse me of anything was a lie, right? One of them has admitted that they lied, right? Has said, quote, over and over again, I lied. That was a fed up. Yes, we got paid to do it. I've got screenshots of one of the people basically admitting that. So we got that much out of the way, right? Then I've got other screenshots of another one of the people who signed on to it, admitting they only did it because they wanted to stay friends with somebody else. Ding, 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 ding. Now, they didn't admit that directly to me because I don't communicate with this person, but they admitted that to somebody else, and I've got screenshots of that. The whole thing is done. It's debunked. It's bullshit. And so I have talked about it way more than I ever intended to. Way more than I ever intended to. You know, I wanted to just make that video and never talk about this again, but we've ended up talking about it over and over again, which we shouldn't be doing because it's just not important, right? It's not important, and it doesn't help us to continue talking about drama like this. That's what they want because it's gross, right? You know, imagine somebody put imagine people, look, I don't know who you are, right? There's well over 100 people watching right now. I'm sure that you've all looked at things on the internet before that you don't want the whole world to know about. I'm sure you've all, had some text message conversations with an intimate friend that you don't want all over the internet. They went out of their way to gross everybody out and violate my privacy and really hurt my wife and really hurt my parents and really hurt my relatives and really hurt a lot of people. A lot of people got hurt way more than me. I'll say that, I'm the target of this, I've got a huge ego and I'm whatever, but they hurt a lot of people other than me. The whole thing is dumb. But anyway, so, I've tried to just, move on and not talk about it. They want us to keep talking about it. And the reason they want us to keep talking about it is because it's gross, right? And they want everyone to think of that when they think of CPI. So no, it's not a matter of me just addressing it one more time or whatever. I've already addressed it, and then some, and then some, and then some. It's all addressed and it's all debunked, and we should just move on. And they want us all to talk about it, right? Because, I think I'll quote, of all people, Haas, right? He said, imagine someone took a video of you taking a shit. Would that look good on your part? No. You know what I mean? And I mean, they found a way. They found a way to frame me in the most negative light and violate my privacy in way and gross people out, right? And I didn't do anything. And even in all the effort they put into it, all the money they spent on it, all the people they went around to and tried to assemble, they still couldn't accuse me of anything, really. I mean, they basically said he's a bad dude and, he had some naughty conversations with people and he did something consensual with somebody one time. That's all they got. That's all they had. And I mean, and if they spent that much fucking money, and they put that much work, they put months of work into it, that's all they could come up with, is that I'm an egomaniac, I'm narcissistic, I'm self-centered, I had some naughty text conversations with some people, that's it. That's all they got. That's all they got. And the thing is, they don't want anyone to realize that's all they have. And that's why they made the thing that they wrote. It's like over like 50 pages long because they don't have anything to say. And so they want you to just skim it and then think I raped somebody. They want you to just skim over it and think I sexually assaulted somebody. I didn't do that. Didn't rape anybody. No one accused me of rape. No one accused me of sexual assault. No one accused me of anything. Right. And I'm not interested in it either, Kiwi. And I'm not interested in it. I'm sick of talking about it. So let's move on. Right. So don't ask me to just address it because trust me, I've addressed it. Right. And the same thing happened, right? And this is a lot of people fall for this, right? When I met with Alexander Dugin, right? People have asked me about it. Did you meet with Alexander Dugin? And I said, yep, I did, because he's an anti-imperialist intellectual from Russia. And many times I'd get people, why can't you just address the Dugin thing? I did. I've addressed it about 1 million times. About 1 million times I've addressed the Dugin thing. I met with Alexander Dugin. He's an important intellectual, right? And I met with Alexander Dugin, right? And a lot of people would just say, oh, can you just address the Dugin thing? I've addressed it. I addressed it over and over and over and over. And there would always be people who'd come in and would ask about that because they want that to be the topic of the conversation. They don't want me talking about anti-imperialism. They don't want me talking about class struggle. They want me talking about cancel culture, and trying to convince people. And the thing is, the people who don't accept what I have to say will never be satisfied because it's not really about that, right? It's about the fact that I work for Russia Today. It's about the fact that I'm building an anti-imperialist organization. And it's about the fact that the memo has been sent out among people that are cowards and social conformists and trying to fit in with this world. The message has been sent out that I'm a bad dude. And if you're a coward and you're a social conformist and you are afraid of the consequences of being associated with somebody who's been labeled a bad dude, no matter what I say, I can't change the fact that, all the people who read Jacobin, all the people at Midwest Marx, they all think I'm a bad dude. And I'm not going to change that by showing you any evidence, right? And if what it's really about is that you're a coward and you're afraid, well, people won't like me if I like Caleb. Well, I can't change that. You know what I mean? But if you actually want to know the facts, if you actually appreciate what we do here, if you're actually loyal to this community, then you'll do it. And that brings me to the next super chat, which is CPI was a target of PSYOPs. It's better now. Absolutely, it's better now because all the people who are holding us back are gone. The people who were there, I learned who my real friends are and who the real allies of this community are and who they're not. There were people that had weaseled their way into the board of directors of the old CPI who had never read any of my books. There's two of them. There were two individuals who played a very negative role in all of that. They weren't part of the wreck, but because they were connected to some people and they were useful allies, they had maneuvered their way into the board of directors. They had never read the CPI manual. They'd never read any of my books. They knew nothing about the city building tendency. They were just there because they'd been kind of useful to us or whatever. And they knew we had access to funds and resources and people, and they wanted to take advantage of us. And of course, when the problem happened, they immediately abandoned ship. I'm glad they did. Good riddance. And those two people can go fuck themselves. And I'll never work with them again and I'm glad because as long as things were going well, they pretended to be my friend. But then when we had problems, they were out of there. And so I'm glad. I am absolutely, absolutely glad that those people are gone. And I learned who my real friends are. Our new president, of CPI, Elizabeth Young, I never would have known how amazing she was if she hadn't stepped up and been calling people constantly and holding our community together. If she hadn't stepped up in that moment and said, I am not going to let CPI die. I am going to hold this group together. And I mean, she was amazing during that moment. She showed that she has real amazing dynamic leadership skills, and she's got a background. I mean, she was a pastor for a long time. I mean, she's got a background. I mean, she's got skin in the game. I mean, she's a tough cookie, well, I never would have known how amazing Elizabeth Young was if it wasn't for what happened, So in a way, I knew something like this would eventually happen. I didn't see it happening the way it did. I knew something like this was going to happen. I didn't expect it to happen so quickly, and I didn't expect it to happen the way it did, but it did, and now it's done. And you know what? And now they can only ever do this once. You know what I mean? They can only ever do this once because now it's old news. And now going forward, everything I do from here forward will be with the understanding that this is already floating around out there, and people who don't like me can point to this for their own reasons. And it's stupid and it's idiotic, and the new CPI is better. Absolutely. All righty. There we go. All righty. Thoughts on Milosevic. He was the leader of Serbia. He was leader of Yugoslavia, and then Serbia, as Yugoslavia was breaking up. He refused to privatize the economy. And so the USA and Saudi Arabia started backing the Kosovo Liberation Army, the KLA, which was a group of Islamic fundamentalists from Albania who had moved into a region in Serbia called Kosovo, and they started trying to separate Kosovo from Serbia. And there was a civil war that went on, and the U.S. media accused Milosevic of committing genocide and ethnic cleansing against the Albanians, which now the UN has admitted was not happening, right? There were crimes, there were atrocities, war crimes by both sides. I mean, it's not that, they were perfectly fine. There were definitely war crimes that went on, but there was no genocide going on. It wasn't the Holocaust, right? They lied. They just lied about that. And they used that lie to bomb the hell out of Serbia and then to stage a color revolution, Otpor, and then to eventually arrest Milosevic. So yeah, Milosevic was largely innocent of what he's been charged with, and now the international community has admitted that. So, he was the leader of a socialist country, and my former boss, who I worked for, Ramsey Clark, was his lawyer. And I mean, he was innocent. I mean, did people, were there war crimes in the Civil War? Sure. But were they committing genocide against the Albanians? No, that wasn't happening. All righty. Why Venice and the Crusaders attacked Constantinople? All right. Now, this is a little bit out of my league, my friend. This is a little bit out of my league. I don't quite know where to begin with this one. The Crusades in general it was about trying to re-seize Jerusalem from the Muslims. It was the Pope. The Pope called forth a mobilization of young men from across Europe to seize control of Jerusalem, to re-seize Jerusalem. And there were, I think, there were like 7 crusades. One of them is really sad. It was called the Children's Crusade. And it was like all these children were like assembled to go to Jerusalem and fight. And it was supposed to be a miracle. And they all got sold into piracy or something, sold into slavery. It was really sad. It was a really, really sad thing. I got into the Crusades when I was a kid. I started reading about the Crusades and, was it Godfrey de Bouillon and Peter the Hermit, and it was largely in France, right? It was largely in what we know modern France, right? It was a lot of, and they formed the Knights Templar, which were warrior monks. They were like monks. They were chaste, and but they were monks who carried swords. They were like soldier monks, and they went and re-seized Jerusalem. And it was a big mobilization. Some people think it was an attempt at population control, right? Because, like as I pointed out before, medieval society has that problem of the, of the feudal mode of production, is not, it doesn't allow technology and technological advancement, and it was kind of stuck in a loop. What's wild is it was the Crusaders who eventually brought the knowledge and the achievements of the Islamic Enlightenment to Europe, right? The Arab numerals, the achievements in mathematics and science, even though they were going there and killing Muslims and slaughtering them and seizing Jerusalem from them. At the same time, they were, they learned some of the science and they brought it back. It was, the Crusades were, it was an attempt to seize the Holy Land, to seize the Holy Land, by the Vatican, because Muslims controlled Jerusalem and the Vatican wanted to control Jerusalem. And many people think it was largely just a population control. It was a way to, siphon off people, the excess population in feudal society. Some people also see it as medieval Europe was threatened by the Islamic Enlightenment. The Islamic world. Oh, there's another Rumble rant from Mariah. And I'll get to that next since it's a Rumble rant. But, the Islamic Enlightenment was a threat to the medieval order in Europe. In medieval Europe, they didn't allow science. They didn't allow historical progress. And the Islamic world was rising at that point. It was making all kinds of breakthroughs in technology and science and all of that. And so, the Catholic order of Europe was afraid of that. And so they mobilized their forces to try and crush it, to try and hold back historical progress. That's one theory as well. All right. Now, Mariah sends a Rumble rant and says, when you do this type of work, you will get smeared by elites. It's a guarantee. Yep, exactly. And, I wish people could understand that. I wish people could get that through their heads. And I wish people would also get it through their heads that I ain't going to stop. right? I ain't going to stop because I don't know what that looks like. Since the moment I left my parents' house, I've been doing communist stuff. I ain't going to stop, right? Some certain people have said, well, you need to stop organizing. I don't know what that looks like. I mean, for me, that would be like stopping breathing. I don't know what stop organizing looks like. So what do I do then? My whole mindset, my whole identity, my whole life is centered around being an organizer, being a communist, being an anti-imperialist. I am dedicated to bringing this fucking system down. I am going to empower working people. I am going to build a community of resistance, a community of solidarity. That's what I'm all about. That's what I'm all about. I am in a movement. I'm not in an internet community. I'm not in a scene, a commodified identity like Peter Coffin talked about in his great documentary, Marks for Sale. I am in a movement, and I never left that movement. And I've been in it, my whole identity, my whole mindset. That's what I understand is how to be in a movement. And actually, that's probably one of the main points of my new book. If you read Letter to Bob Avakian, that's a point that really pretty clearly comes out in the book. In the book, that's one point that is made pretty well. The book was basically a call for a movement, and it was an explanation of a movement, and it was, so if you want to understand how I see things, go and read my new book, Letter to Bob Avakian. Go and read it. Go and read it. There you go. Enjoy it. All righty. All right. If anyone has any more super chats, keep them rolling in. Keep them rolling in because give me something to talk about here, right? It's just it's almost 12:30, 12:26. I got plenty of time, not going anywhere. But when I run out of super chats, I have to stop talking. So keep me talking, right? I got energy. Get me talking about what's on your mind, folks. Get me talking. All righty. Pre-visualization of what to do if my Vespa hit a car saved my life when it did hit a car. Well, Kiwi Dave, I think you should always have a plan for if something goes wrong. Absolutely. Absolutely. You should always have a plan for if something goes wrong. You should, prepare for negative situations. I'm not against that. But you don't want to fixate on what could go wrong. You don't want to fixate on that. You just want to have a plan for what you could do in such a situation. That's what I would argue, right? That's what I would argue, right? You want to have a plan, but you don't want to fixate. You want to fixate on visualizing, having everything go well, and having yourself be prepared to do the best you can under even harsh circumstances. Okay, and there's another Rumble rant. Would a revolution in the U.S. see any changes to the national flag? I'm sure. The U.S. flag has changed so many times. Every time we add a new state, we have to change the flag. And so I can imagine that, as the USA would transition towards socialism, a new flag would probably come into existence. But we shouldn't preempt it because that would be silly. We're not there yet, right? And right now, the American flag is the flag the American people identify with. That is the flag that stands for the people in this country. So we need to identify with that flag. Now obviously black nationalists are going to feel differently, but we're not black nationalists. We respect black nationalists. We support them. We support, we support them, but that is the flag that the American people identify with. And so while we seek to identify with them and while that is their flag, we are going to use that flag. But yes, I can imagine. I mean, the U.S. flag has changed so many times. So many times the U.S. flag has changed. I can imagine it would change afterwards. All right, Gala, you're on the list for sure. You are definitely on the list. I did see a little bit of it, and I got plenty to say on that. All righty. All righty. Please name one good thing and one bad thing about Plato. Well, as far as one good thing, Plato's account of the death of Socrates, the Phaedo, is one of the most beautiful texts I have ever read. And it makes the case. I wanted to have my own copy of it. And so I actually bought this compilation of Plato's writings just so I could have a printed edition of it. That's the quote about go forth and make music. It's very beautiful. And it's the case of separating the soul from the body, which is kind of what I was talking about on here tonight. Right. Forcing your body to do what your mind wants to do, making a commitment, that Phaedo dialogue on the death of Socrates is really one of the most beautiful texts I have ever read, and that's Plato. And Plato largely is responsible for making Socrates' teachings come out there. Bad thing about Plato, I hate Plato's Republic. I never want to read it again. I had to read it in every political science class I ever took, and I never want to read it again. And it's a very elitist text. It's very eugenics, the myth of the metals and all of that. I never want to read the Republic again. The parable of the cave and the myth of the metals and the breeding festival. They have a big orgy once a year, the breeding festival, and oh God, I do not like Plato's Republic at all. I find it elitist and reprehensible and awful. So I like Phaedo and his recording and his account of the life and death of Socrates. I do not like Plato's Republic. All right. Not sure how unholy Rome expects to find solidarity within the working class when he makes a film called Death to America. We must work alongside with patriots on both sides of the spectrum. That unholy Rome guy, I mean, he's nuts. I mean, not only is he against patriotism, he insists that me saying, just pointing out that Marx supported Abraham Lincoln and aligned with him in the Civil War makes me a racist. That guy's a nut. He's a nut. I didn't watch this film. Someone else told me, though, that it advocates left adventurism. And he advocates like stockpiling weapons and stuff, So if that's true, again, I don't know, right? I haven't watched it myself. I mean, the source is pretty good, but that film that he made, Death to America, is a very, very left adventurist film that one almost wonders if it's provocateur-ish behavior, right? That it advocates stockpiling firearms. It advocates, it looks like, like a fishing expedition or something. That film is very well made. It's very high production, I was told, but it basically advocates terrorism. It advocates terrorism and some kind of armed struggle against the government, which is ridiculous. And no one should be talking that way. And like if someone, that's one thing we will not allow in the Center for Political Innovation. If anyone shows up and starts talking that way, they're out the door immediately, because I don't want to go to fucking prison. I really don't want to go to prison. We advocate a peaceful transition to socialism through the democratic process. And anyone who's going around talking about stockpiling weapons or forming some kind of militia or something, get out, right? Because that sounds like Fed shit. It sounds like Fed shit to me. And that's what that sounds like to me. And Death to America. I mean, great. Death to America. That's what Americans want. They look at their home and their community. It's like, it's not dead enough. Can we make this country more dead? Yeah. I mean, it's like, again, it's optimism. Is it about what we're against, or is it about what we're for? Right. And it's like, if your message that you're putting out to the world is it's that negativity, you're going to get it. You're going to get it. Our job is to be optimistic. Our job is to visualize what we want and try to bring it into being. Our job is to really focus on what we want, to come up with policy solutions, to advocate peace with Russia and China. That is our job, not to, even if you called the film, even if you called the film, Death to Terrorists, or even if you called the film, Death to Child Molesters. I mean, still, it's like you're making a film like there's something I don't like and I want to kill it. Is that a message that's going to bring you good energy in the universe? Is that a message that's going to help you build a constructive organization? No. Generally, I am not in favor of films, books, and articles that begin with the phrase death to, right? If you're writing books or having events or making films and they begin with the phrase death to, you're not in a good spot. Alrighty. And Kiwi Dave says he's not interested in my sex life. Good. And it's none of your business either. And for the record, I mean, I would never have brought my personal life onto these streams or anything like that. So yeah. And it's disgusting. And it shows how vicious they are. Alrighty. And did you hear Tucker Carlson's speech in Hungary? I did hear some of it. Not all of it. I didn't hear all of it, but I did hear some of it. And it sounded like he was advocating he was saying, look, I mean, he's like, why are we going after Hungary and trying to make Hungary our enemy? Why are we, and the USA, Hungary is an ally of the United States, he argues, and the USA is going out of its way to antagonize them because they've asserted their independence and they have kind of a conservative government. I didn't watch the whole speech. I just watched a couple clips from it that I saw, but I should probably go and watch the entire speech. Because, the government of Orban in Hungary is less excited about hostility to Russia. And they've been accused by the American government of being a far right government and all of this just because, they banned George Soros from the country. They're not thrilled about the transgender thing. And, they've been kind of demonized. And there you go. So, no, but Jenny Lynn is saying he did a little cringe. I just have to watch it. But thank you, Gala. Thank you very much. And I guess I don't have any more super chats or Rumble rants or Rockfin tips. So I guess, I guess that is our show for tonight. I'll be back tomorrow night. So yeah, I'll be back tomorrow night. So thanks everybody. Have a good evening. And let's do this again soon. Probably tomorrow night. I'm going to put on the closing music. In the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.